You know that feeling when you're just swamped? Like emails piling up, you're trying to make sense of endless documents, maybe even uh, putting together a presentation last minute.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of drowning.
Yeah. And you just wish there was like a cheat code, right?
Yeah.
To understand what really matters. A way to grab the essential info without getting totally bogged down in all the details.
Hmm.
It feels like we're constantly told to do more with less and far less time. And, well, Tom Peters pointed this out ages ago. The amount of information out there is just exploding.
It is. It's exponential.
Sometimes it feels less like a knowledge boom and more like, I don't know, our brains are about to just short circuit.
That sense of being overwhelmed by information is incredibly common. I mean, the sheer speed and volume of data we encounter every single day, it can feel completely paralyzing if we don't have some really effective ways to handle it.
Exactly. And that's precisely why we're doing this deep dive today,
Hmm.
specifically for you.
Mm.
Think of us as your, well, personal guides, maybe, sifting through a whole bunch of material to pull out those crucial insights, those surprising facts, those aha
Yes,
moments.
the stuff that helps you become truly well-informed.
Right. Without feeling like you just crammed for an exam. So today we're zeroing in on the Critical Thinking Toolkit by Marlene Caroselli.
Okay.
This book is just loaded with practical techniques to sharpen your thinking across the board, like whether you need to think on your feet, come up with creative solutions, or, analyze complex info.
So practical tools.
Yeah. Our goal here is really to explore some of these tools and see how they can directly benefit you in becoming a more effective learner and problem solver, no matter what you're tackling.
And Caroselli's toolkit really recognizes that, in today's fast-paced world, having a solid foundation in core subjects, well, it isn't always enough anymore.
Right.
What's increasingly important is the ability to think critically, solve problems creatively, innovate, collaborate, communicate effectively, all that stuff.
So it's about the how, not just the what.
Yeah. Precisely. And this toolkit offers some really hands-on approaches to developing these vital skills.
Okay, so let's dive in. Imagine you're in a meeting, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe you're reading some really dense report. How do you make sure you're actually absorbing the key information and not just like nodding along?
Yeah, the nod and pretends method. Not very effective.
Yeah, no. So Caroselli discusses attending to attention and introduces this concept called the knowledge skeleton.
Knowledge skeleton. Okay.
Yeah, the interesting idea here is that instead of trying to memorize every single detail, you build a framework picture, like the basic structure of a topic with the main themes as the key component.
Like the bones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then as you listen or read, you slot the important points in as, supporting details.
This method really aligns with how our brains actually process and remember information. By organizing new information into a pre-existing mental structure, you're making it more meaningful and easier to retrieve later.
Wow.
The knowledge skeleton provides that initial scaffolding, which helps you focus your attention and avoid feeling overwhelmed by just too much information at once.
The book even gives an example around empowerment, suggesting categories like um, business practices, definitions, structures, ideas, and partnerships.
Right.
It's like setting up your filing system before you get the documents. And crucially, Caroselli emphasizes not trying to write everything down word for word.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, but instead capturing the core ideas concisely within those categories you set up.
That's such a critical point. We often default to trying to transcribe information, right? And that can actually get in the way of understanding.
Really? How so?
Well, by focusing on the main concepts and summarizing them within a structured framework, you're actively engaging with the material. That leads to better comprehension and, longer lasting memory. Just writing word for word can be passive.
That makes sense. You're processing, not just copying. Okay, now let's look at another fascinating way to boost comprehension by really boiling information down.
Boiling it down. Okay.
Caroselli talks about rhymed reductions.
Rhymed reductions. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, the idea is to take a complicated piece of information and condense the crucial points into just a few words that rhyme. It might sound a little playful, maybe, but think about how easily you remember a catchy jingle.
Yeah. The effectiveness of mnemonic devices, like rhymes, in helping us remember things is actually really well documented in cognitive science.
Ah, okay. So there's science behind it.
Definitely. By forcing you to distill complex information into a short, rhyming phrase, this technique strengthens how that information is encoded in your memory. It makes it easier to recall later.
like that example Caroselli gives of Bruce Tuckman's team development stages.
Oh, the form, storm, norm, perform one?
Exactly. That perfectly illustrates how a simple four-word rhyme can encapsulate a pretty significant concept that, well, loads of people remember for years.
It's true. Cognitive research actually shows that our brains are kind of wired to remember information more effectively when it's presented in a rhythmic and rhyming structure.
Huh. Why is that?
It taps into our auditory memory and creates stronger neural pathways for recall. Think of how easily we remember song lyrics. It's a similar principle at play.
Yeah, totally. And it really highlights how often we might only remember a tiny fraction of dense material unless we find a way to make it stick.
Mhm.
That four-word embryo, as Caroselli calls it, then gives you a memorable anchor point to expand on the complexities of teams and how they function.
Right.
It's all about identifying that super condensed, easy to recall essence.
It really speaks to the idea that sometimes when you're first trying to understand something complex, less can actually be more effective.
Yeah, like the core first.
Exactly. Once
Yeah.
you have that core understanding locked in, you can then dig deeper into the details and the supporting information.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the different ways we think.
Okay, different modes of thinking.
Yeah. Caroselli stresses that effective critical thinkers need to be lateralized in their thinking, meaning they could use both creative and analytical approaches effectively, depending on the situation.
So using both sides of the brain, so to speak.
Kind of, yeah. And this reminds me of a surprising statistic mentioned in the book. Apparently, a large percentage of young children are considered very creative, right? But that number drops dramatically as they go through school and into adulthood.
Oh, I've heard something like this. It's quite stark, isn't it?
It really is, down to just 2% by college age, in one study she cites. I remember in school, I used to love brainstorming, just wild ideas, but somewhere along the line, I felt like the focus shifted much more towards finding the single right answer.
The convergent thinking trap.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating to see that reflected in the statistics.
That decline in perceived creativity as we age is a really significant issue. It suggests that maybe our education systems, maybe societal norms might unintentionally be, well, stifling creative thought.
Yeah, maybe pushing us towards just the analytical.
Could be. Being lateralized, being able to move smoothly between the logical, detail-oriented thinking often associated with the left brain and the more intuitive, imaginative thinking of the right brain that's so important for effective problem solving and just coming up with new ideas.
Okay, so how do we actually develop this ability to think laterally? The toolkit offers various exercises.
Practical stuff again. Good.
Yeah. One for sharpening quick thinking is called juxtaposed pairs. You get two seemingly unrelated words.
Okay. Like cloud and stapler.
Exactly. And the challenge is to find a logical connection between them. It forces your brain to make connections it wouldn't normally consider, really stretching those creative muscles in a fast-paced way.
Ah, I see. Exercises like juxtaposed pairs are so valuable because they disrupt our usual ways of thinking, our mental ruts, and encourage us to think more broadly.
Makes sense.
By forcing connections between seemingly different concepts, you're essentially training your brain to explore new relationships and generate those unexpected insights.
And then, when it comes to strengthening our analytical thinking, the book introduces tools like the 5 Why technique.
Ah, the 5 Whys. Classic.
Right. It's a really simple but powerful method for getting to the root cause of a problem just by repeatedly asking why until you dig past the surface level symptoms.
The 5 Why technique is fundamental in so many problem-solving approaches, isn't it? It helps ensure that you're addressing the underlying cause of an issue rather than just dealing with the symptoms again and again.
So you get lasting solutions.
Exactly. More effective, long-lasting solutions. The example Caroselli gives, tracing the reason for a late report all the way back to an employee not receiving proper initial training. That really illustrates how this repeated questioning can uncover deeper, often systemic problems.
It's about not settling for the first easy answer, but continuing to probe and understand the deeper reasons.
Keep digging.
The book emphasizes that effective critical thinking isn't just about speed, although that's definitely valuable, especially, in today's fast-moving world. As Lee Iacocca famously said, the best thing you can do for your career is learn to think on your feet.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. But that quick thinking really needs to be supported by both creative and analytical approaches. It's not just one or the other.
Precisely. Speed without accuracy, without logical reasoning. Well, that can actually lead to negative outcomes, right? Making snap judgments that are just wrong.
Right. hasty decisions.
Critical thinking involves a balance of these different skills. The ability to quickly identify the core issue, creatively brainstorm potential solutions, and then analytically evaluate how feasible and impactful those solutions might actually be.
So what does all of this mean for you, our listener, who maybe wants to learn quickly but also thoroughly?
Yeah, how do you apply this?
Well, these techniques from the Critical Thinking Toolkit provide really practical ways to boost your information processing and your problem-solving skills.
Things you can actually do.
Yes. Whether it's using a knowledge skeleton to capture key points from a presentation, or trying to condense a complex document into a rhyming phrase to improve your memory, or using the 5 why method to get to the bottom of a challenge at work.
These are actionable tools.
Right. You can start using them right away. Like, think about that next team meeting you have. Instead of just taking linear notes, maybe you could try sketching out a quick knowledge skeleton beforehand with the key agenda items as the main branches.
And what's great about these techniques is just how adaptable they are. You can apply them in so many different situations, can't you? From preparing for that meeting to tackling a tricky personal challenge.
Totally versatile.
The main focus really is on actively engaging with information rather than just passively absorbing it, being an active learner.
Absolutely. So to quickly summarize some key takeaways for you. First, actively focusing your attention and using frameworks like the knowledge skeleton can really improve how efficiently you understand and remember information.
Get that structure first.
Second, the rhyme reductions technique and those examples like form, storm, norm, perform, they demonstrate how powerful it can be to reduce complex information to its essence for better recall.
Make it sticky.
And third, remember, critical thinking involves being lateralized, consciously using both your creative and analytical thinking skills as needed. Don't just stick to one mode.
What's particularly insightful here, I think, is the consistent emphasis on going beyond just a surface-level understanding.
Deep blue thinking.
Yes, whether it's questioning initial assumptions with the 5 why technique or challenging conventional thinking, as the book encourages, critical thinking is fundamentally about intellectual curiosity, isn't it? And a willingness to dig deeper.
It really makes you consider how often we might just skim information without truly engaging with it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Guilty as charged sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Remember that statistic about the decline in very creative individuals as we age?
Yeah, that was striking.
Or Leah Kaka's powerful advice to learn to think on your feet. These are the kind of aha moments that really stick with you and highlight why consciously developing these thinking skills is just so important.
And that development, well, it's a continuous journey, isn't it? It requires intentional effort and consistent practice with techniques like the ones we've discussed today. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
So as you go about your day today or this week, maybe consider this.
Yeah.
How might you apply just one of these techniques?
Just one small step.
Yeah. Perhaps challenge yourself to summarize a dense article you read, just a few concise words. Or think about a problem you're currently facing and try asking why
Say.
5 times. See if you can uncover a deeper root cause.
And this kind of raises an interesting question for you to consider, maybe mull over later. In our constant drive for efficiency and learning, that need for speed, how do we make sure we're not sacrificing a deeper level of understanding?
Oh, that's a good one. The speed versus depth trade-off.
Exactly. Is there a sweet spot to be found between quickly grasping key insights and truly mastering a subject? It's definitely something to think about as you continue to explore and learn.
A really powerful point to end on. Ultimately, sharpening your critical thinking skills empowers you to navigate a complex world, to learn effectively, and to solve problems both creatively and analytically.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is an ongoing journey of intellectual growth, and we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable tools to take on that journey with maybe a bit more confidence.